Alright, in the last video you brought scanned line art from a file. You learned how to open up Photoshop and play with some of the resolution and dimensions. We learned what landscape is and portrait. Now we're going to learn a little bit more about Photoshop and the tools within it. First we're going to learn how to save files. Now I still have this Dragon 1 JPEG open. Since I've already copied this over to the other Photoshop file, I don't need it open anymore. And so I'll go ahead and click on this X, and that should close it, and now I just have the one file. Now anytime, I'm going to tell you this early, this is a good habit to learn no matter what kind of MGD project you're working on, save often. You don't want to do a whole bunch of keystrokes and mouse clicks and then have the chance of losing your work for whatever reason. Maybe your computer has a hiccup, maybe there's a power outage, who knows what can happen, and you lose potentially minutes if not hours of work. So we're going to learn how to save, and instead of just keeping the file name untitled, which is the document title it gives you by default, we're going to give it a much more sensible name. So we're going to come up here to File, Save As. Alright, and now in the Macintosh area I get all these places where I can save. Now for me, I'm going to just go ahead and save this to the desktop. But before I just save it to the desktop, it's a good idea to create project folders, even if there's only one file in the project folder. This is just going to make it easier for you to manage your folders and files for all your classes in MGD. So in this window, if you're not seeing all these options, there's this arrow right next to the Save As File field that gives you a more expanded view. Once you have the expanded view, you'll see this option for New Folder. Let's go ahead and click that. And I'm going to create make sure that I was already on desktop. And this one's going to be called MGD 102. And the reason why we choose that is because that's the client name. And then I'm going to use an underscore. You can use a hyphen as well, but no spaces. MGD 102. We'll call this Dragon Art. Now if you want, you can have capital letters. You can have them all as one word. Or another thing you can do is have all lowercase with hyphens in between. This is probably a better convention, because eventually with this font, L's and capital I's start looking the same. Sometimes capital O's and zeros look the same. So if you go all lowercase, notice that lowercase O's, you can tell the difference between an uppercase or the number 0. Alright, so let's call this Dragon MGD 102 Dragon Art. And I guess if we want to have all hyphens, we can do that. And then I'm going to put the date. So this just happens to be done on August 16. Now in this case, I just chose the month and year. And this puts things in a sequential time order for you, so you can tell when that file was created. Then go ahead and put your name. Last name's fine, or a nickname that nobody else has. And if you have to, let's say you have more than one file of the same name, maybe you're giving people different options for the same project, you could add a versioning. So I usually just put a V2 or a V3. If there's only one file, you can just leave the V off. So this would be one way of doing the new folder. If you like things with a little bit more capital letters, we would do MGD 102 with an underscore, Dragon Art as one word, but each letter is capitalized. I then have another underscore between the date and the name, and then an underscore, and then my last name. So let's just go with this for now on the folder name. Either way, if you had all lowercase with hyphens, that's fine too. When you get into the web world, everything is lowercase and hyphens, so it's not a bad convention to get into, but sometimes this maybe gets a little bit more formal or easier to use and read. So let's go ahead and create that folder. You'll notice as soon as I create it, it opens all the blank information here. That means there's nothing in that folder yet. So I'm going to name the file the same name as the project folder. MGD102 Dragon Art 0816 underscore Swanson, and leave the .psd. Now if you don't see the .psd at the end, there might be a setting on your computer to turn on or hide the extension, but you want to make sure that the PSD is there. If you leave that off, your computer might not know what kind of file it is. So let's make sure PSD is there. The other thing you want to make sure is format is set to Photoshop, which it should be by default, and also make sure that layers is checked. The colors you can keep as embed color profile. Once you have that all set, go ahead and hit save. It gives you a little warning box, and that's fine. That just lets you know we're not too worried about that, and we'll just hit OK. Now you'll notice up in the tab that the file name is the tab name. That lets us know that that's the file. Alright, so that was pretty cool, pretty simple. Next we're going to show you how to start coloring your line art.